Find your way into a comfortable seat. And it might be, and dust yourself off, whatever you need here. Take myself out of the closet. There we go. Okay. Find the comfortable seat. It might be easy pose. You can take half lotus. You can take full lotus. And then close your eyes and just for a couple moments, don't do anything. Don't try to change your breath. Just breathe normally. Maybe listen to the sounds around you in your house. And then start to lengthen your breath. You might really, have like a soft Ujjayi breath where you have a small constriction in the back of your throat. So there's sound to it, but it's not the dramatic Ujjayi breath of your vinyasa practice. And then bring your hands to heart center. Let your thumbs rest against your breastbone. Let your elbows be heavy. Take a moment to maybe dedicate your class to someone who needs some love or guidance. They can be on either side of the threshold. And let's sound 3 ohms. So the recording and the Zoom cuts my voice off. So you're just going to have to step in for me and make the sound when you can't hear it by yourself. But trust that we'll come back together. Empty your breath. Take a deep inhale. Ah. 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 And then relax your hands down. And you're going to come into a wide-kneed child's pose. So cross your ankles, roll over your crossed ankles, bring your big toes to touch, spread your knees as wide as they go. And then stretch out in child's pose. We're going to start with our arms going straight forward, but then we're going to come into a twist. And I'll guide you into it when we get to it. So find your way, make the small adjustments. If you're not sure, you can always check out what your neighbor's doing. If you have a neighbor, everyone's looking good in the poses. Just take a couple breaths to become familiar with it. Let your elbows be heavy. Let your breath still remain intentional. And Sarah Powers says it's like a little Ujjayi breath or a quiet Ujjayi breath. But where there is this, from when you're by yourself, it nearly can just sound like the waves crashing into the beach and then out again. So you feel this natural rhythm, and there's a natural pause when we breathe all the way out. And then we breathe in, and then there's a natural pause before we breathe out. So that still remains in any kind of Ujjayi breath. Now come up onto your elbows, keeping your knees just as wide, and you're going to thread your left arm behind your right elbow and bring your left ear to the ground. This might be as far as you go, or maybe you can reach your arm up, your right arm up, bend your elbow, and kind of wrap your arm behind your back. You might be lucky enough that your fingers pinch in between your thigh and your rib cage. But whatever stage you're at, just try to relax your arm. Take a full inhale. With your exhale, sigh it out. And notice how the sigh helps you soften into the pose. And once you find that softness, decide to stay in the posture. Stay through being annoyed or irritated or bored. But if there's sharp pain, of course, come out of it. But whenever we're practicing Yin Yoga, we want to take a different approach. So we're very well educated in the yang way of like, go harder, go deeper, faster, yeah. We're very actually unpracticed when it comes to softening and staying with something. So at first, especially when we're doing Yin Yoga for the first time, it's a very unfamiliar space to be in, especially around other people. And it's actually, for me, the slowness of the poses that makes Yin Yoga more of a, I find more experienced practitioners usually are attracted to it. And that's not saying age, it's not an age thing at all. It's just after you've been doing a lot of yang yoga. When you find the time to slow down and settle in, it's like you encounter a whole new conversation in something familiar in a different way. See if you can let your muscles soften. And then as peacefully as you're able, we're going to switch arms, but we're going to keep our legs as they are. So your knees are still wide. Come up to your elbows, and then thread your right arm behind your left elbow. Bring your right ear down to the ground. You may even sometimes need a pillow underneath your head. And then stretch up your left arm, bend your elbow, wrap your arm behind you, letting your fingers spin maybe to your inner thigh, or just relaxing your hand around your back. So today I wrote on the yoga invitation that I'd be talking about the Aquarian archetype. And I am, and I will. and more specifically, especially because we're right at the beginning of Aquarius season, but more especially, I want to talk about this movement from Capricorn to Aquarius, because we get can get so static in our thinking, or so, very good at putting everything into little boxes. We can forget that the picture of the zodiac is really a picture of the evolution of an archetype, not just this like about face flipping into another archetype. And while Saturn and the spleen are so connected that it seems like it would be an easy one to do for the Aquarian archetype, I chose to do the heart series today, the heart and small intestines, Yin series. So the heart's occult connection is to the sun. And so really looking at this path of the sun moving from Capricorn to Aquarius, this heart nature moving. And then start to unwind, pulling your right arm out down and your left arm back, and wiggle around a little bit, slide your knees together. You can even take your arms back behind you, kind of an embryo pose. Looks like you're like hiding with your head in the sand. And then after a couple breaths, you can also, of course, do whatever you want. That's always your option. We're going to come sliding into Sphinx pose. So it should feel good to stretch your legs long. You want your elbows slightly in front of your shoulders. You relax your legs, let them be heavy. If your lower back is sensitive, you take your legs closer together. And if that's still not enough, like you're still too sensitive, you're always welcome to slide your elbows forward and drop your ribs lower. And if you're not like uber sensitive, but you get a little like twinge in your lower back while you're in the pose, you also can always engage and squeeze your thigh muscles and then relax them. And often it will actually take the little tension away from your lower back. So part of the excitement of this year's astrology is Pluto entering Aquarius. And last year, Pluto came for the first time in 250-ish years, came from Capricorn into Aquarius as for a little bit, and then it retrograded and went back into Capricorn. So now it's the second time that it's dipping into Aquarius. It still retrogrades one more time into Capricorn, and then in November 19th, Pluto will be in Aquarius till 2043. No need to write that down. But it's going to be there for a long time. And wherever Pluto moves, we can picture it brings a certain intensity into wherever it is. So if you know any Scorpions, they bring Hi, Tova. They bring intensity, kind of, and passion into whatever they're doing, whether it's making stuff or talking about something or loving somebody or not loving somebody. There's an animation. And with Pluto, it's kind of the same thing. And so Pluto will be intensifying and really making it more important, all of the themes that are connected to Aquarius. And, just like just like any archetype, this intensification doesn't just happen in like the places where the archetype is like good and fun and nice. And it doesn't just happen in the places where the archetype is a shadow. It really is like one of the laws, which is when a certain energy exists, it can be used for good or evil. When the human being develops in certain ways, developing freedom, it is then free for light forces or dark forces to work in any archetype. So oddly enough, maybe it's just an astrology community, but I think it's a little bit more popular these days, is we have certain kind of like stereotypes about star signs. We have certain critiques about different archetypes. Now, either stay here, or for a deeper back bend, you slide your hands towards your elbows and stretch your arms out for the last, not half, maybe like, I don't know, ninth of the pose. Let your shoulders soften. So the Capricorn archetype is known to be like tradition and rules and earthbound and serious. And then Aquarius is not quite the opposite, but unpredictable. It's connected to uh, sudden changes and genius. It's connected to craziness. And it's connected to the collective consciousness. And slowly start to soften your elbows down, stack your forearms, and just roll your hips side to side, feeling that the movement takes away the feeling of fragileness in your bones. And take your hands underneath your shoulders and just push back into child's pose. So you have your knees comfortably wide, big toes touching, stretching your hands forward. And then the next pose we're going to do is sometimes referred to as puppy dog, but it's Anahata Asana. So you come up onto your hands and knees, and then you slide your arms back to where they were in a child's pose. So it's like child's pose with a really big, I don't know, bump. If it hurts your nose, you can always take your right hand to your elbow and rest your forehead on your forearm. But you want to keep your thighs perpendicular to the ground. And with every exhale, you feel your chest kind of expanding down towards the earth. So we have a little bit of like kind of these opposites where, the stereotype of Capricorn would be somebody who always goes with tradition and kind of conforms to, public opinion, or not public opinion, but like very practical, very, very traditionalist. It sums it up. And then in the Aquarian, you find nearly the opposite, where they're nearly like wired to not be able to go along with any tradition. But both Capricorn and Aquarius are ruled by planets that everybody has in their chart. So each one of us has a place in our being where we are genius or a traditionalist. Each one of us has, a Saturn and a Uranus. Notice as you stay in the pose that it gets intense. If you want to switch your arms for, uber balance in the posture, feel free. Your arm pillows, exactly. Nice. So those are the stereotypes that we work with. And I want to just build another layer to this archetype of Capricorn as being that part of our human being development that requires this earthbound body. And it's kind of the densest and kind of one of the hardest parts of our incarnation is to be on earth and to be this physical, this material. And so in traditional esoterica, there is this understanding that when we've lost the freedom to know something, I should put this differently. When we've lost the capacity to know something innately, like that we're born with the knowledge of it, just like you and I, we all know everybody has 2 arms and 2 legs and a head. We all know that we possess 4 limbs, say. It used to be that the human being, with the same certainty, knew that we had a body, a soul, and a spirit. And that is no longer true. But what is possible now, that wasn't possible when we knew for sure that's how it was. There's a possibility in faith that wasn't there before because we knew, but now we don't know. And we have to cultivate something in our own person out of our free will to really have faith in what we are learning, what we are understanding about the holism of the human being and the world. Now start to slide forward. And again, wiggling your hips side to side. And just kind of like, it restores your lower back. And then come up onto your hands and knees as a transition. Cross your ankles, roll over your crossed ankles. And then sit with your legs wide. So we're going to come into dragonfly. And you might want to turn long ways on your yoga mat so that your heels are cushioned, or maybe you're not that sensitive, or you have a really nice plush carpet, or it's not going to be an issue, whatever. Fix it up so you like it. And we're going to start with a straight spine. So take your hands behind you and just really feel like an active, like sitting up, pulling your abdominals in, a little bit of a yang moment. And then we're starting to just roll our hips forward. So rolling, you can feel like you're rolling your pelvis onto the floor. And this might be enough for you where you have a decent stretch in your legs and it's, it's on the edge of where your spine wants to go in a neutral position. You may also find it's easy for you to bring your hands in front of you and start to slide your hands forward, coming down with a kind of a neutral spine. This is just a nice way to protect your lower back. And once you feel your body start to resist, you then start to soften a little bit, dropping your head, letting your elbows be soft. So you can also do the same thing when have your hands behind you, where you can just drop your chin towards your chest. You want to find a place where you can get to safely, where the intensity is there, but you're not right at your edge of it. And then soften. So maybe you can even lie on the floor. I want to go off camera here. Take a full inhale with your exhale, just sigh it out. Oh. So in last, I was totally, in last week's class that I forgot to record, I think this was the class that I talked about how in the archetype of Capricorn, we find actually the Houdini character, the great escape artist. So if a Capricorn is poor, they'll do their due diligence and they'll become wealthy in this life if that's what's really important to them. Or if they're stuck in some sort of situation, they'll get out of that situation. And so the way one of these beautiful descriptions of the arc of Capricorn is to move from the very beginning of Capricorn, where someone is really like, it's the devil card, it's Saturn, it's the person who can really master all of the things in the physical world, in the materialistic world. And then that archetype evolves to the point where instead of being just about feeding their own shortcomings, lusts, and desires, the soul has developed in such a way that they understand that the ultimate escape is that out of materialism. And so the very final degrees of Capricorn are related or talked about as like the gateway to the divine, the gateway to God. And then we move into Aquarius. And that's where we want to start to understand that every human being, everyone in the collective has this element of genius. Now, albeit we might not recognize it, but that this is part of something innate in the human. It's like, there is this potentiality in every living being to echo the same spiritual development that a master has shown us or that the earth will do. And so that's part of the genius, can we say, of Aquarius, that by representing the collective unconsciousness, it represents collective consciousness. Sorry. It represents every dynamic of genius, not just genius in intelligence, genius in movement and feeling and seeing things in a new way. That's really what genius is connected to. Now, while I can snap in this pose, it's maybe not so comfortable. So notice where you're going and start to bring your elbows back. And we're going to just bring our legs together. You might have to physically carry them and stretch them out in front of you. And today we're going to have a yang moment in staff pose here. And so you're going to activate your legs, flexing your feet. Take your hands right by your butt, your lower back. Sit upright and see if you can engage your bandhas. So your root lock by lifting up your perineum, your Uddiyana Bandha by just pulling this point 2 fingers below your belly button. Just energetically pull that towards your spine. And then the final bandha we're going to do in this pose is we're going to bring our chin to our chest and our chest to our chin in the Jalantara Bandha. So you're going to engage your feet in Pada Bandha, your hands, Hasta Bandha. And then take your root lock, engage your root lock, engage your Uddiyana Bandha. Take a full inhale. And then exhale, lift up your chest and bring your chin to your chest and your chest to your chin. Relax your belly, release your breath. And then start to take your hands like little spiders and walk your spiders forward with a straight, fully extended spine. And then once you can't walk your fingers any more forward, then you start to just soften and let your head drop, coming into what's called in Yin Yoga caterpillar pose. Soften with your head down. Especially forward bends. It can be remarkable on some days how different your forward bend can be in the beginning of 5 minutes or 3 minutes, and then the end, or even in the beginning of the day and the end of the day. So in old astrology, Aquarius and Capricorn were ruled by Saturn. And still today, astrologers refer to Saturnian Aquarians and Uranian Aquarians. Because part of the shadow of the genius archetype, the Aquarian, the shadow can be actually being so stubborn about, on one hand, being so stubborn about their own way that they get stuck in it. But the other weird and kind of more surprising part is the Aquarian has this kind of a heart that's connected to the collective, this compassion, this I know it's often described as like a colder sign or outer space sign, but ultimately there's this heart connection to the collective. And so in Aquarian biographies, you'll find the one place that they'll compromise being, like not being themselves, is to like to please a loved one. And we all have this shadow, don't we? Where, you know, our triumphant march to be our individual self can be thwarted, especially by the people we love, because we don't want to disappoint them. We don't want to, you know, say no because we think that they'll think we don't love them, or, you know, we have all of these different stories and requirements. So take 3 more soft, full breaths. And then start to roll up. And you're going to slide your feet in, and you're going to turn your fingers to point back to your hips. And we're going to do another little counter pose with a yang movement. So squeeze your buns and lift your hips, and then soften your head back into the cradle of your shoulders. Now lift your hips high, stick out your tongue, look at your third eye, and with a whisper, roar like a lion. So you go. Beautiful. Bring your butt back down, slyly wipe off your chin. And we're going to come into fish pose. So bring the bottoms of your feet together. And I always think this should be called blowfish pose, because you want your knees wide, bottoms of your feet touching, Baddha Konasana. But then take your heels about 2 hands length away from your groin and come back onto your elbows. Shimmy your elbows closer together. Pop your chest up as you do, and then soften your head back. Now, we're not going to stay in this variation for the whole 5 minutes. We will soften to the ground about halfway through. But if you feel like you need to come reclining onto your back before I tell you to, please do. And if it's too much for your neck to hang your head the whole time, you can lift your chin up and have your chin to your chest, or you can never hang your neck and just keep your chin on your chest. Take a couple of breaths to get familiar with this shape, with this pose. Allowing it to soften, and thereby you to soften. So, as we can see an individual's biography, where the shadow side of this Aquarian can be kind of damped down, put away, or hidden. We want to start to understand that this also, as we move collectively into this Aquarian age, that as much as this possibility for our individuality is opened, it is also and we've seen this already, it's also going to be more challenging to go against the collective. So here, let me describe this a little bit. We have too many things that have the theme of justifying one evil to prevent another bigger, scarier evil. This story has been used forever and is used in propaganda. This is how wars are fueled and fights are provoked. But that argument is going to be more and more used, like, oh, if you don't do that, you don't care about the collective. This is the level, like, so in someone's own biography, it will often be one person they love that they're like, okay, then I won't be self-expressed there or something. But on a collective level, like, there's so much danger to this being manipulated by our care, being led away from our own genius for the good of other people. And this, for me, is where, going into it, we want to practice our own wakefulness and understand that being loving isn't being a doormat, and being loving isn't about saying yes and being likable. Because we find ourselves often kind of put into a corner when we confuse the two. Let your elbows slide out to the side and bring your hands over your head, touching your thumbs together and your index fingers together. And then you're going to slide your hands down to where your head and the ground meet, and you're keeping the bottoms of your feet together. So now you have a triple diamond. So it's a little bit like when we don't have kind of ownership, or when we don't invite belongingness to the uniqueness of ourselves. When we don't do that, others can kind of take advantage of us. So when we're trying to fit in, when we're trying to portray something we're not, even if we think it's camouflaging us and keeping us safe, often what it's doing is kind of like pulling the rug out from underneath us, and we're not really understanding that's a place where we're not when we're not being ourselves, we're most vulnerable. So in this Aquarian archetype, we have the genius or the crazy person. And I think part of our own inner development is understanding that for most of us, actually, you have to say yes, and then you get to find out if it's really the genius or the crazy person. But it's like you have to say yes anyway. So often, to meet the genius or to be the genius of yourself, you have to risk that you might be crazy. And this is a strange kind of predicament because it's the gamble, and the gambler is the opposite. That's Leo. The gambler is this idea of like really having like faith, like, no, I know this risk of being myself is the path I need to go. So even in this high high level spiritualized request for us each to be ourselves, even that path is a risky path, or is a path where we have to be daring and courageous. We have to risk failure or misstepping. But most likely, you already have experienced the moments in your biography where you risked being yourself, and it was like a whole new world opened up to you that never was there before you took that risk. And then start to stretch your legs long. Reach your arms up over your head, stretch your whole body long. Take a full inhale, squeeze all your muscles to your bones, and on your exhale, just sigh it out and go, ah. Let's do that again. Inhale, stretch your legs long, reach your arms above your head, squeeze all your muscles to your bones. You can even try to push your legs down to the ground, your arms down to the ground, and release. Sigh it out. And then hug both your knees up to your chest. Maybe lift up your face and kiss your knees. Thank you. They've gotten you this far. And then stretch your left leg, hug your right knee in more, and take your right knee across your body to your left. If you're tight in your hips, shift both of your hips to the right and then drop your knees to the left. You want to have your right hand lower than your shoulder, palm pushing or facing the ground, not pushing, it's yin. Take a full inhale, and with your exhale, just sigh out. Let your body get heavy. So we all have these different stories of freedom and not freedom. Like, for instance, where we're born into a family and the relationships deepen because of the time we spend with our family and become more complex and there's something, of course, unshakable about family. But then you have these other human beings that you have met in your life, and some you've even made officially with ritual and paperwork made officially family. And then you also have others who, are friends or are part of your community, and that you can have such a close and intimate and nearly familial relationship too. But there's something different. It's been chosen in a different way. And perhaps the relationship would be similar if you were born into the same family. But this element of different bloods and choosing it, that is something that you understand, this feeling of connectiveness to other humans in a whole different way. So that that we are no longer just, connected just to our bloodlines. We're actually connected to our karmic lines or our spiritual lines, or we're connected to human beings across ages, across cultures. So part of the Uranian, the Uranus part of the Aquarius is this real unpredictability. Whenever I'm looking at a natal chart, and wherever you see Uranus in the birth chart, in the natal chart, I always think that there's like kind of like a live wire there. You're never quite sure which way it's going to snap or inspire or strike. And now hug your knees back to center. If you're tight in your hips, slide your hips to your left, and then hug your left knee in. Stretch your right leg out and bring your left knee across your body to your right. Your left hand is lower than your shoulder. You're either looking above you or to your left. And you want to make sure your knees are as high as your hips to really feel the twist in your spine. And with this time of Pluto in Uranus, Pluto in Aquarius, it's also, there's an emphasis on the future, the science, the technology, all about futures. And in spiritual science, part of the conversation isn't just to not have any of these technologies or advances, but to really to be ever challenged in keeping our own human freedom so that we keep them in balance. When we have, yes, I'm going to say it, healthy boundaries with our technology, then we can use them as tools instead of them using us for, all sorts of weird stuff. But it's not something that we are, this is part of why we need Saturn, because Saturn helps us build discipline and have restraint. So in the past 10 years or so, or maybe even 20, I guess, actually, if I think about it, I've been working in yoga studios, and there's this one trend in yoga that It's like, oh, just do what feels good. And while that sounds lovely, I really encourage us to explore not just being satisfied if something feels good right here, right now, but really trying to look more deeply into, is feeling good enough? Is that what should make us, make choices? No, we already know this. We want to keep it in balance. We want to have some level of comfort and joy and bliss, but we don't want to do that at the expense of bigger joy or at the expense of becoming ourselves. So I'll just leave us with the quote from Peter Marshall. He's the gentleman who started nonviolent communication. When we long for a life without difficulties, remind us that oaks grow strong in contrary winds and diamonds are made under pressure. And then start to roll back to center and get ready for Shavasana, our corpse pose. So if you want a blanket, and if your fire isn't roaring or your pelt isn't warm enough, take a blanket over you. Feel free. Yin yoga often will make you feel quite cool, actually, not just like cool, obviously, but like quite cold. So cover up and then close your eyes. And find your way into Shavasana. So letting your breath return to its natural rhythm. I didn't read it yet, but I'm pretty sure I know kind of what it said. Bye, love. Let your attention be in your witness self, just noticing. Start to deepen your breath. Wiggle your fingers and your toes. Maybe smile. And with your inhale, stretch your arms up over your head, reach your feet far away from your hands, and vice versa. And with your exhale, curl into a ball, rolling onto your side. Taking a couple breaths there, just noticing your vibrancy, your vitality, maybe your twinkle of genius. And then help yourself up into a comfortable seated position. Bring your hands to heart center. Let your thumbs connect to your breastbone. Let your shoulders soften. Close your eyes and just feel the people in this moment. Lift up an image of the person you dedicated your class to. Smiling, happy, alive. Empty your breath and let's close with one Om. Take a deep inhale through your nose. Ah. Bring your prayer hands to your third eye. Invite the divine light. And as we bow forward together, we say, Namaste. And so much love. Woo-hoo. Now make some noise. Yeah. And you can give yourself an applause if you want, but the noise making is really just to wake up. Thank you so much.